important that we eat the rainbow, that we have many, many colors in our life of what we eat. Sorry.
Um, and if you don't, oxidation is also called rust. So we don't want a rusty body. So if we can prevent rust with some vitamin C. It's funny, hibiscus, and I would argue all the hibiscus, but especially the sour hibiscus, is specific for cardiovascular. So all both the heart as well as the circulatory system, in particular when it's weak. And so we look for things like anything from congestive heart failure to easy bruising. So if like every time you touch something, you end up with a bruise, that's a capillary fragility. Basically the blood's leaking out. And it's funny, we can say, ooh, the energetics of sour tightens the tissues up, it tones the tissues. Yes, the red color, we say, has an affinity to the blood and the heart, sure. And also, one of the symptoms of vitamin C deficiency is easy bruising and easy tearing of the tissues. So I'm just going to generically say, if you brush your teeth and every time you do that, you're spitting out a mouthful of blood, you probably have a vitamin C deficiency. And if same thing, like there's many reasons why we can bruise easily, anemia, B12 deficiency, iron deficiency, and so forth. But vitamin C deficiency is surprisingly common, and a glass of orange juice will not suffice in your daily dosage of vitamin C.
That will cause more inflammation because of the sugar.
But a glass of infused hibiscus tea that you grow in your own backyard comes pretty darn close.
And I already have a mixture made up that's an immunity mixture that's at the clinic if you wanted to stop by and get it. It's this wonderful tea that most of the herbalists have drank that I fed to them, but also we'll just give you the recipe and you can make it yourself.
Julie, it's funny, hibiscus is in the Medica of Chinese medicine, and I totally don't remember the name of it.
I'll try to figure it out.
I believe it's in your textbook, but don't quote me on that. It might be a little bit more obscure than that.
I'm looking.
Definitely, this is island medicine. Throughout the Caribbean, they use hibiscus. Certainly, the Jamaicans in their sorrel tea made it the most famous. But throughout the Caribbean, all the people.
Do you recognize that?
Furong. Yeah, Furong is definitely, that sounds familiar. Sorry for you on Facebook that I keep throwing you on the table like that. But
Patty's saying Lu Shen Hao.
yes, but I've seen both of those. The Furong, yeah, both of those I believe are correct. The Chinese always have a couple names for it. I don't believe it's specific to hibiscus, not specific to the cranberry or the sorrel.
Yeah, that's what it's saying. Like Rosa sinensis is like the general hibiscus. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see. No, do you know what? Patty's totally right. We're both right.
Yeah.
The one's the general. As it gets sour, it goes into Lu, and it goes into another one that's the Meigua Chi.
Yeah.
Something like that. Oh, just
honestly, although I love me the Chinese medicine stuff. I'm going with the Jamaicans on this, the Caribbean medicine, and it's very long history of using it for that heart circulatory. And probably they didn't know what vitamin C was 1,000 years ago, but they knew that it did good stuff to that easy bruising and that weakening heart. So I don't know. Let's talk tea for a moment. So certainly the hibiscus. This lovely little guy is this is our Florida bee balm or Florida horse mint. You had the name up there, the Mandara.
Yep, I have it.
Puntata.
But they also say that it's spa multiple.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had heard it as spa. I didn't know that last.
Hey, I just want to say this to break into the whole. There's a whole Chinese hibiscus thing going on now here.
Sorry.
The Roselle, our herb of commerce, is actually a third one. That's the Meiguai Chi, which is what I was telling you, or Chai, or Che, or however you want to go with it. You would if you saw it, but I'm not going to even try. I'm typing in the horse mint for you guys. I'll do all that information.
Yeah, that was a Cuban oregano.
Did you say this was not a true mint or something like
that?
It
is. It's the same family. So I believe
it's a Lamiaceae.
So yes, it's in the Lamiaceae, but it's not a true mint. So it's in the mint family, but the wrong genus. Sorry, nitpicking. uh,
Isn't it intense?
so it is definitely it's horse mint because it kicks you like a horse. No, I don't know that's true, but it is definitely a more intense mint than honestly most of us are used to dried mint. And fresh peppermint, spearmint, things like that are intense. The horse mint is as well. This is a favorite of bees, and so this is considered a type of bee balm,
Yes.
mainly because the bees love it so much.
Its structure of its flower is bee balm too.
Yeah.
That's
And this grows wild in Florida. This is a Florida native. We found this on our school camping trip. We had a couple of huge patches of it. And whenever it's in flower, that was basically the head of it was the flower head. The bees go crazy. They'll be swarmed over the top.
It's cute.
And so mint is in general digestive. It's a carminative. It helps with bloating and gas. If you make it strong, it has a bitter aspect to it so that it is actually stimulating to the bile as well.
This one's really bitter.
Yeah, no, it's intense. You don't need a lot of this. So a little bit goes a long way. And it's funny, there's so many in a tea with other herbs. By itself, it's a little too much, although you could probably make a mean mojito with this.
It'd be a great Olympia.
I would say this would go well with any kind of a gin drink because that's a juniper berry type of drink. And so that drying astringent aspect of gin, this would be lovely and digestive. But we could also chop this and put this just around as a dusting on a plate. Even if it wasn't consumed, the smell is stimulating to the senses. We use mint to wake up. No caffeine, but it's awakening. It opens your eyes up. It kind of shocks you a little bit when you drink it. So, sometimes those parties can go on a while. I need something to keep me awake. So just the smell, you could, if we have a plate and then a bowl of something on top of it, just putting it underneath and the heat would bring those smells out and add to it. It can be combined with lemongrass, which we'll talk about here shortly. It can be added into if you're using an herbed oil for dipping bread in, it's lovely in there in small amounts and helps break through the heaviness of the grease and oil associated with it. It combines with lemongrass, hibiscus.
I want to ask you something.
And if you want to be weird, rosemary. Oh yeah, you can use it as a tincture, as a carminative.
Yeah. And the other thing on that note, I want to actually say something about the fact that we did say the word mucilaginous for like heartburn with that.
Oh, you're right. We didn't.
But we'll talk about that in a second. I think I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just recently did this whole study from the herbal standpoint from our clinic about how to retrieve our smell and our taste from the whole COVID. That's a symptom that goes with other illnesses. And I was shocked and disappointed to realize it was just mint. That everybody, like the long-standing formulas, it's all just kinds of mint. And so they were talking about the Chinese, that's the boha, and different kinds of mint. This is intense. I can imagine a tincture.
I would compare this to boha.
Yeah, it's very intense. This one that we have right now that's growing, it could be because it's so happy in the backyard, but man, it's intense. So I would imagine a tincture of that to help retrieve your taste and your smells would be something that was indicated for sure. It was ridiculous because I wanted some profound thing and it was just mint.
We're probably recorded enough that, the feds aren't going to come down on us if we say the word COVID. But one of the things that on a professional herbalist that a lot of people have been using is sage, just garden sage. Like stuff your turkey sage. For folks who are like, no, I'm doing great. I've recovered from COVID, but dang it, I can't smell or taste anything. Sage tea.
And those hold the same characteristics on paper, that they both are sticky, they're both an aromatic, they both have similar stems, they both can be very drying, they both have a high quantity of oils, volatile and stable. And so they hold the same characteristics and classifications when making medicine, that they can dry things up, they can also instigate capillary movement so that, bringing that blood back to the surface. And so I can see why that would be a similar thing for sure.
So I want to talk about one of my favorite herb tea combinations that's a little weird. Lemongrass and rosemary. And it would sound like, well, that would never work together. And lemongrass is lovely if you don't know it. In the Caribbean, we call it fever grass. And by that, we can assume that it's good for fevers. And in that same sense, we can think of it as cooling. So if you never experienced it, I'm sure you've seen somebody who does. If they eat too much, especially if you're eating out or getting food in or something, there's too much salt in it, or it's something that they have a food sensitivity to, they tend to inflate water retention. And so like, I only ate a half a pound of food, but I put on 5 pounds. How in the hell does that happen? It's literally from a food sensitivity oftentimes, or the salt actually changes the fluid metabolism of your body. And so you could go down to the doctor and get a diuretic, or one of the things we can give with our food is a very mild diuretic, and that's lemongrass. So fever grass or lemongrass is cooling. I'm going to break my own rule here. It's not always anti-inflammatory, but a lot of cooling herbs are anti-inflammatory, lemongrass being one of them. And rosemary, which is invigorating. And rosemary, there's so many things. It is a strong antioxidant. It is specific for certain types of pain, and it's very specific for the memory. And so if you're into Shakespeare, I forget which one of his wonderful writings was, it's rosemary is for remembering the past, present, and future. And so we use it for things in the head. So rosemary is one of my go-tos for preventing hair loss from things like chemotherapy or patchy hair falling out from stress. I can't think of it.
Hold on.
It's late.
Alopecia.
Yes, alopecia. We use rosemary topically for that.
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
We just recently had a case where we had somebody who was underserved with the doctoring community and had their hormones all out of whack because of lack of checking it. They had huge patches of hair falling out, and topically within a week had it growing back in thick just from a wash of this and something else that we use. And so that shows a big, huge evidence of that. The other thing is, as a person who works with the plant singing machine, Pam Montgomery, one of my plant spirit teachers, talks about it being the plant that's helping you remember who you were, who you are, and who you're going to be. And we use it for all dementia, Alzheimer's, brain fog, anything like that for the same reason. So it's something that kind of backs up that whole Shakespearean thing.
Oh, I had rosemary in there so you could mix the smells in your. Oh, there it is.
I was gonna say, I'll go get it.
Yep. So now mix it with.
So Bob's now passing around rosemary and lemongrass together. That's lemongrass? Lemongrass. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm writing it down in the order that he's doing it so that I can, if anybody needs to have it. And I also, if you go and grab the recording off of Zoom, I'm putting it into the Zoom as well, so that you'll have like a record of what happened.
So I'm going to just say that I'm a freak when it comes to smell and taste. That Renee and I do a lot of formula writing and stuff for larger companies and small companies. Mm-hmm. And we create our own formulas, and there's times when she'll go over and say, smell this.
I do.
What's missing?
Yeah, like,
and I'm like, you need one more drop of.
Mm-hmm. What's wrong with it?
And so I think it's, yeah, and for our herb students or future herb students or whatever, the more we engage our visual, our olfactory, and our taste, the more we start to put these things together and see how they feel to us. What is there too much, not enough? We like it, we don't like it. Do we notice anything weird in our body? So I handed those herbs out one at a time. I handed the lemongrass, and everybody's like huffing the lemongrass, maybe smelling it, tasting it a little bit. And then I handed out the rosemary, and you can smell that separately, then mix them together and see how they fit together. Those two scents combining and competing for receptor sites in your schnoz and so forth. It's hard to make tea out of it. And so that's part of formulation, is we want things to be pleasing to the eye, to the nose, and to the palate, and have a medicinal benefit. And so changing the ratio of that to what you like is
And-
correct.
And with the lemongrass, it's all species, but anytime you have a lemongrass of any kind, it's used the same way in that country of origin. And so that's another reason why it's just a yes.
And it's funny, I particularly, we're in Florida, so it's going to be hot here on Thanksgiving probably. So the rosemary and lemongrass is very specific in the summer for cooling off, but I like it because we're generally overheated from overeating, the fluid retention, like we said. So I kind of like that as a holiday meal kind of thing. What other teas have we got? Oh, I didn't say that one. So the next one, yep, I know you're in
Tell
here.
me if you, I hope.
Did you spot holy basil? There's my holy basil.
It might have been the thing that I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, so I didn't know whether you had holy
Do
basil.
you know
up
which
there.
one you have? I didn't. I didn't see it.
Who knows?
Do you think?
Rama.
Well, here I can tell you. Give me
Okay.
a tiny.
So sorry, got a little wilted.
It is. I think it is Rama.
There you go.
It's not my favorite.
So it's always funny when I talk about holy basil. It's still basil, so it's the same genus as basil, and so this is a stronger version from the Italian basil. It's much
Tastes like clove.
yeah, it's very clovey. It's more aromatic, not as gentle as Italian sweet basil. But I would put all the attributes of this, I would put with Italian basil, just less so. We can also find that very similar to this exact species is the African tree basil,
Yes.
which is used, again, same ways. Once, and you'll notice, sorry, it's already gone to flower, gone to seed here. So just like with any basil, once it goes into flower and seed, you change the taste. Like Italian basil gets a little intense once you go. So you keep clipping it and it keeps growing. And it gets this bushy thing that's really cool. And so the second you neglect it for a week and out comes that, now we change the taste. It becomes more bitter. It becomes more acrid. It's not bad. It's just more intense. So the same is true of holy basil and the tree basil as well. If we allow it to go like this, and I like it to reseed, so I let them all go. For medicine, the more intense taste is better.
Mm-hmm.
So we want that stronger aromatic. We want that stronger bitter acrid thing going on. So in the same way, we could add this to any of the teas. We could add this with hibiscus. We could add this with lemongrass. And I haven't tried it with lemongrass. That would be really good.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Now that it's chilled out in my mouth, I'm super happy.
The reality is, as a tea, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. But we could actually mix this with Italian basil and make pesto.
And everybody who's been in class has been on the receiving end of eating my pesto. Yeah, this is something that I gave you recipes.
So it's like, it's still basil. We just need to cut the intensity of a little bit. And everybody's going to go, wow, this is the craziest, best basil I've ever had, or pesto I've ever had. So literally, this herb is to make everything okay. It's for tense conditions. It's for, oh my God, I'm so stressed out from all this holidays and the cooking and everything else. You should be drinking this. You should be putting this in your whatever drink you're enjoying. You should be putting this in your pesto. This could go into your stir fry. Anywhere you would put basil, you can
Bob's
put
just
a little.
making me want to drink.
I know. I'm going right to the booze every time, right?
And then I'm going to try to answer Julie's question.
We always make everybody jealous who has to go online. Smell and taste everything.
It's
Renee,
good. And
so our other classes are our Thursday night classes that are not free, but they're really fascinating. And the last two classes Renee did was on spiritual and medicinal cooking. And let's just say we ate really well in those classes.
I need to make the seed bread again.
I know that was good stuff. So, I bet you didn't get this one. I did a weird one. Wax myrtle.
Oh yes, do that one.
So
you're saying, about that?
You like it?
I told
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's not bad.
So all you guys, in the indigenous healing, we beat you with plants and spit on you. And the reason why we do with plants is to whatever stuck you're in, whatever stuck you're going through, we're going to move it out. And it would be the same thing as making like a balm for a bruise. The bruise was stuck and causing pain. We need to move that out. Those are always very aromatic things. And so almost everything that Bob is using, almost I've like beat somebody with, which is really funny, but also very good. Like you can see that would be a really nice, like it would change everything immediately, like change your course immediately, wake you up. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to put in the wax myrtle.
Yeah.
They put this in teas, right?
Yes, they
So I
can.
always blame this flavor on the cloves. I love this.
It
flavor.
depends on what your recipe,
But
your
now I'm
original.
thinking, oh, I
Yeah.
thought this clove was
It depends on what your recipe is, where that originates. It would have been more likely and easier to have that than not.
In
It's,
India, yeah.
yeah, it's very clovey right now, but where that comes from originally, it would be more like this. This is everywhere. This is one of the plants that circumvents the caste system, so it's allowed and should be growing everywhere on the streets, outside the monasteries, everywhere that there is, so that all people can have it, because it's supposed to be helping you be closer to God. So I can't imagine that that wouldn't be the thing that you were using when you were robbing the graves or helping deal with the plague or dying people, that would be appropriate for your connection to God to be present with you to protect you. So yes, absolutely. Okay, sorry, wax myrtle.
So, it's funny. I was just like, I had a general idea what I was going to teach. I've, been thinking about it for the last couple of days. And I was like, I don't know. I'll see what plants we got when we get here. And so about 2 hours ago, I wandered around out the back garden there and said, all right, let's see what I can find in here that would be appropriate for that holiday mealtime, or that we've used. Because we always try to do that from our house when we make Turkey Day or Christmas dinner or something for everybody. We try to mix it up. Renee's cranberry sauce with the cranberry hibiscus rocks.
Yep.
And so I don't even know if we've used cranberries.
We haven't in a very long
Yeah, in a while.
many years.
So, and if I didn't say it, the holy basil is super easy to grow here. Like throw seeds on the ground, you'll have holy basil. It's a no-brainer. It usually reseeds, especially if you have a couple plants fairly close together, it'll reseed itself. So the gift that keeps on giving. So wax myrtle, and this is not the finest example of it. This is a large bush to a small tree here in Florida. This is a native all up and down the eastern seaboard. And I walked by it 3 times and I kept staring at it. And so I was like, nah, there's something I should be talking about with this. So I decided to go ahead and clip it, even though it's a new planting out there for us. I went and I took one of the rougher looking
You would be
branches.
great in a gin drink.
So yes,
With little
that
juniper berries.
wasn't why I pulled it, but yes.
You're doing that to me.
So along the stem, and this one doesn't have it yet, there's these very smaller than a pea sized waxy berries that will grow along the stem. That's where it gets its name. This is a myrtle, and most myrtles are used for medicine in almost every tradition. But the wax part of the wax myrtle is from those little berries that grows along the stem. And classically, you could drop those into hot water and a waxy substance would come to the surface that's scented. And it smells like Christmas. So you can either use the leaves themselves, if you're really into painful harvesting and endless collecting of the wax, you could actually make a candle out of the wax you harvest. I'm not doing that. That's too much work. I usually just use regular candle wax, and I'll use the leaves, stems, shavings, and mixing it with pine needles or pine sap will make wonderful scented candles for holiday time, for the winter holiday time. You can also, as Renee pointed out, we could add a few of those berries into a good gin drink, or muddle the leaves into any kind of a drink. It really has a nice, subtle, almost piney smell to it. That's lovely.
Wax myrtle. I'll write it up on the board for you all here. I did it online. So it's going to just be Merica, like myrtle, like just like the same kind of thought process. It is multiple species. Anytime we have a myrtle, it has a similar production. Also, it is bayberry here, that it grows, like we have swamp myrtle, we have all kinds of myrtles that are by all kinds of people and things, and so any of those myrtles were due. I'm going through Bob's
Sorry, I was
chat.
looking at how much time I have, so because I've got weird plants that we don't talk about.
6:24. I mean 7:24.
I was gonna say I got weird plants we don't talk about a lot. I was like,
Okay, so I'm gonna get through your stuff.
We're usually so focused on a category when we're teaching and stuff.
Okay,
So-
so say it again.
Hey, Ashley.
It could be a bitter.
Yeah.
It's actually, because it's an aromatic, it will come off sweet. It's got a slight astringent. It could be a bitter. It's not always bitter.
So because I know Renee's trying not to say it, so I'll go ahead and spit it out. It's used for spiritual practices more often than it is digestive. So yes, it's a digestive without a doubt. And most kind of it's for protection. And so I'll give a good example. A friend of ours, she is married to a South American indigenous person, and they had just come back to the U.S. and she was in labor, and there was not complications, but it was delayed, and it was. Don't call me for this. I don't do this normally, but they're friends.
She wanted to stay at home, and her
but-
mom's a midwife, and
Yeah,
she was,
they were doing a home birth, and the labor was stalled, and so they were like, Bob, can you come over and help and help with the induction? And so I actually had to cancel my patients for the morning and run over to their house. And I'm thinking at the time, I'm like, yay, great, I can put pokey things in somebody and I can stimulate labor usually. But I was thinking about her husband, and literally didn't speak any English yet. And here he was in a foreign country, literally lived in the Amazon jungle and was uprooted and brought here. And and his first child, blah, blah, blah. That had to be a very unsettling experience for him. And it was very shortly after they got here, I think. And he had already met us, I think, at that point. So he knew us. So I went out into the park behind our house where there's huge stands of wax myrtle.
He knew us, and we were probably the only lifeline he had, because we understood what was going on.
And so I went and I
Part.
grabbed up a bunch of branches of it, and it's very traditional in the jungle there to use aromatic plants to protect and to kind of, it's a type of smudge. And so literally, as she was laying on the couch and we were trying to induce the labor, it's a time when people are thought to be very open and they're weak, they're exhausted, trying to pop out a baby. And so to place something aromatic around her, and it was something that does grow, not in the jungle, but more in the foothills around the jungles. And as soon as I did it, I handed it to him to smell, and he smiled. He's like, I know this plant. We couldn't know that, he didn't know the name as we knew it. And so to place those around her, it's also used specifically for not strong contractions. So it is a labor plant. It's used
for anything that's stuck.
Yeah, so the roots are primarily used, but we can use all parts. It's just stronger in the roots, but then you got to dig up a tree. So I tend to use the aerial parts because it's a little less abusive to the plant. But it is specific for stuck labor, stuck things. And so in that sense, making a candle of it as protection from all the crazy people that are there at your house for dinner. Too often, I hate to say we love our relatives and in-laws and all of that. The reality is that sometimes it's really stressful, and we feel obligated to bring folks that maybe, crazy Uncle Louie or whatever comes over, and maybe you didn't want him there, but so from that set, it smells like Christmas, but it is also protecting you from the crazy people across the table from you.
It literally is used to unstick or dislodge something that's attached to you or your household. Mamas will use it to sweep underneath the bed if the child's having recurring bad dreams. It literally gets rid of the blockage. Whatever the issue is, you don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. You got to go on. And so it's something that for a very long time in all cultures that any of these grow, that's the case. And in any of our ethnobotany books across the eastern seaboard all the way down into South America, anywhere where these grow, that's what the culture will say about it. So internal and external, anything that's stuck. And so absolutely, we want free-flowing, non-stuck items going on. And if your belly's messed up, especially, I can see this going into a drink. If anybody ever tries to make a candle with it, though, it'll be super infuriating, because you can gather and gather and gather for several days and get several tea candles. And it's like, no, this is not, like, you can get the wax berries melted off and skim the wax off. And it's really a pain in the butt.
And I think your dad corrected me on my pronunciation. Papalo. Okay, good. I got it right. Papalo. This is a herb that I only know of it from Southern California and Mexico. I don't know of it growing anywhere else. Uh, so not native here, but grows like gangbusters, very easy. It reseeds itself. I hate to say it, if you go to the clinic and buy plants from us, you may very well have a volunteer of this coming up in your pot, and it's
Sorry.
such a gift.
That's funny.
If you didn't know it, for people who like hate cilantro, that's a genetic trait. It's not a defect, it's just a trait. I think it's a defect for you. I happen to love cilantro. So this is cilantro on crack. This is the, cilantro, it's like kind of intense and pungent when you first bite into it, and it's there and then it's gone. It's just one note. This has 10. And so the leaves, and it's a small bush. It has kind of almost a dandelion powder puff flower bloom on it. All the seeds fell off of those. Oh well, I spread seeds all the way in here. But if you hate cilantro, you probably won't like it.
How is it?
So when I went to get your Latin for the Popolo, it's multiple species used, and so it gave me this wide variety of common names for it that were just everything that you would expect. South American mint, Mexican, like it was everything that you would expect in there. And they just said anywhere that any of these species grow, they use them the same way. And so it had a variety of pictures as well. So I'm going to put this picture up for you guys of leaf shape. Okay, so I want to show you. So I'm going to put this up to the Zoom if you guys can see my camera. So that leaf you're seeing can get as big as your thumb, even though that one's very tiny. And it's
so I just want to say, I found out from either your
Lily,
mom or
yeah.
dad that there's 2 species. I just found the other species, and I got the seeds and planted them yesterday.
Well, did you hear what I was saying when I looked at the Latin? They were saying anywhere in any culture that this grows, it's used the same way, and everybody thinks they have the right one. Like they're always like, they can say whatever, but this is the right one. It's like,
so Lily is from Mexico, and so her parents, I had way too much fun showing her parents around the yard here, and totally geeking out with them, and they had so much knowledge. And there's like, I had to read it in a book, I can go to a class, but there's nothing like for the folks who grew up and had multiple generations in a community that they actually know what's going on. And like, no, if that ain't the right species, or it's like crap. And so they didn't say it was the wrong species. They just said it's not the good one. The
which
good
is funny
one.
because it's what I just said was that like everywhere that somebody has one, they're like, this is the right one. They're going to tell you that. But
They were excited about that, but they were like, yeah, but it's not the one we really want. So I'm hoping that the new one I got is the right one.
Is it like grown enough? Or if people look out there?
I literally I just put it in the, I had seeds. Yeah, it'll be a little while before we have the right one. I'll hook you up. You can find out for us. So the Popolo is a digestive. In higher dosages, and I'll throw a fancy word at you, diaphoretic, makes you break a sweat. So we can actually use that for things like food poisoning, or a low-grade fever where our digestion is kind of involved. You're getting diarrhea or vomiting along with your cold and flu. Sometimes it happens. Hey, Kim. And the other thing that it's good for is it combines well with other herbs for parasites. It's a very gentle anti-parasitic. And as far as I'm concerned, just an amazing, imagine a psychedelic cilantro. And I mean, tell me if you all had that experience with it. Admittedly, I picked it an hour or so ago, but really a flavor palette that just keeps going well beyond that first, like, oh, that's kind of like cilantro. So I love it for this much broader flavor palette, to drop that into soups and stews. And again, as a digestive, it's great with things that are dairy. And again, dairy is heavy, congesting, sluggish. And so to put this aromatic thing that aids in the digestion with dairy things is, I think, good.
We have like sweets on the table, so after we eat, we'll just grab one, eat it. And
Oh, and like use it as a toothpick almost.
oh, but can we just sit there and we just chew on it? And so we're like, okay, cool.
Oh, that's funny that the twigs after they eat are left on the table because they pull the leaves off and throw them in the food, and that can then be something you just chew on, kind of as a after dinner mint and a toothpick kind of thing. And the epizote
Yeah,
as
I've
well.
heard that before.
I looked for epizote. I couldn't find any. I was going to bring that in too.
We could talk about
Although I might have brought it as a pot. I don't actually know.
I'll look at.
I don't know. Let's play with the pots here.
I'm writing a list of everything
Lordy.
for your online people right now.
All right. Oh wait, I do have epizote.
Oh, shut up.
My only episode in a pot. So yay, episode 8. This is a tiny one. We took the students out on the camping trip, and we found just acres of epizote growing out there. And this is a Florida native. It is definitely Mexico, Central America, and this is both something added to things like it's a carminative, a digestive aid, but it's specifically added to beans and things like that to help with gas and bloating. But one of my favorite go-tos for parasites and pinworms in particular. This one's a little intense. So if you don't need much.
Intense is.
I know, they're so small.
Oh, do you think the papalo is dry and cooling?
Not really.
What do you think it is?
But
Neutral?
yeah, I just don't think of it as that. Yeah, it was like neutral to cool.
Neutral to cool, and then what about moisture level?
Oh, that's weird.
I love when I get the comment, "Ooh, that's weird." Yeah, you guys are like way too many intense flavors I'm throwing at y'all, but it's funny. Like by itself, episode is a little intense, but it mixed into a pot of beans. It's actually kind of cool.
What do you think the energetics of episodes are?
Yeah,
It's
definitely,
it's a good carminative.
definitely a carminative.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. We put things like bay leaf into our pot of beans to do that same kind of thing, and it's not the same. And by the way, bay leaf does grow wild here, so we have 3 different types of bay that grows here. I don't have any. So.
No, I was looking for the episote to try to get it energetic for it. I was going to taste
Oh.
it and see.
Yeah, I was going to say.
They're asking.
Here, I'm not. I don't remember.
They're asking if you think that the papalo is soapy.
Soapy. I wouldn't. Well, so I am lucky that I get to enjoy cilantro, so that I don't get that flavor where somebody who has that genetic dysfunction that doesn't like cilantro gets a soapy flavor with cilantro, where the rest of us normal people don't. Sorry.
Patty, you should be mad at him for that one. So he's saying no soapy unless you're defective.
All right, let's go for the main course here.
I'm trying to episote energetic.
I guess this isn't technically the main course. I guess this is. Sorry,
What are you trying to
I
do?
went crazy. No, not you.
Oh, sweet baby.
No,
No, no.
no, that's not what we're looking for. I went crazy here.
Oh, is it a ground nut?
Yes, this is the ground nut. Uh-oh, it's fighting me. Okay, there we go. So, all right, this one's a little freakish. So there's a bunch of looking things here. So this is the leaves of the ground nut. And so for those who are really into botany,
I'm gonna look.
this is an odd pinnate presentation
Sure is.
with 5 leaves. So 2 opposite. So 2 sets or 2 pairs opposite, and then 1 by itself. That's 1 leaf, what you're seeing right there. And this used to be, oh no, there's a episode in there too. All kinds of things. So this was one of the major exports in the Americas, particularly in the Southeast. And it is called groundnut.
I'm gonna get the Latin for it. And send it.
Ah,
You gotta show your camera. Oh, Lord. Oh, my gosh,
Look
you
at
are
that.
crazy.
sorry, I'm making a mess over
Oh.
here. So
got a class in the
this are the ground nuts. So there's literally,
Nuts on the ground.
so there's a string of these nuts. I'm dropping shit all over my computer. There's a string of these nuts that if this was not in a pot, that would be up to 20 feet long with a series of small potato-like things.
I'm finding the Latin for you people. It's quite
And I'm gonna
crazy.
pull a couple out. Whoops. Okay, you're coming with me. So this is the nut. You can see it on a string. Nuts on a string or potatoes on a string.
Oh, but you know it if I said it or no?
Probably. So you can see this beautiful white flesh.
Appios americana.
Ah, yes, that's it.
Okay.
So we're not going to pass around to eat, but I'm going to say that this is a wonderful.
Appios americana.
Oh,
I'll try to put them on the board. That one I didn't know we were gonna pull out of a pot and do.
Easy way to pass these around, but sorry, it's covered in mud now. I pulled this up. Potatoes.
I was gonna say, can I talk about this a little bit?
Yeah,
It's so weird. Okay, so you can eat this. Like, this is just food. This is really, really good food. Whenever we have a plant that has a dark outside and a very stark white inside, we're looking at a purification. And I'm not saying from a spiritual sense, like for real, that's good for you. Like, you think about yucca and what yucca looks like and then what it does for your body. The other thing is an old tradition from a surgical standpoint is that anytime we have something like the groundnut or a yucca, they would powder it and stuff it inside of a surgery. So if, say, in the Civil War time, you had an arm blown off, the ones that got packed with the groundnut and the flap of skin pulled over, drained appropriately, just like us putting drains in some of our surgeries now, same thought process and concept, and it made it so that they were more likely to live. So internally, that's what those kind of foods do for you. So not only do they feed you a wide variety of nutrients, but they're draining toxicity and toxins and impurities out of you. And from a spiritual standpoint, they would teach us the same kind of thing, that we would be using that to tie up or bind impurities or purification type of thing. So it's interesting. The other thing, this grows on wet feet around the outside of like swampy areas. So this
River
is
banks,
same
ponds.
concept of that purification and pulling things through, pulling the water through. Whenever we have things that grow with wet feet, that's usually what they're doing in that environment. So to see it play out real time, if we need to find it, and that's how we found it here, is we just go to something that's kind of sunken in. And Bob was teasing when we last did our last YouTube has the groundnut, us finding the groundnut and getting very, very wet, and it was upsetting. It was in what's called a old-timey cattle dip. There used to be cattle dips, and we don't have cattle dips anymore because we don't run cattle through the whole middle of the state, but the dips are still there. So what happens is you'll have this completely flat area, and then you'll have this like marshy bog area that's almost like a little lake that's not a lake anymore. That's a cow dip usually. And so there's cow dips in our park we don't even realize. And we're like, oh, that's what it is, because it's running next to the canal. And so we find it in the cow dips. And so we tromped into one to find them for you guys on that video.
Well, Renee was on Snake Watch. So
Yes,
it is a vegetable. So its primary use, yes, there's cool medicinal uses
like
and all
yucca.
that. But this is something that you could go out and harvest, or if you have a marshy area of your yard, you could grow easily. Like, throw it on the ground, it will grow, and it has like a viney thing that'll grow over your fence, and you dig it, like literally you could pull bunches of it. It's no longer a plant of a culinary plant that's harvested because we over harvested, and by the 1800s there wasn't enough that it was worth exporting. So now for 100 years we've ignored it. 200 years we've ignored it, and so now it's everywhere. Figured out how to identify it. I'm like, holy crap, everywhere I go this is growing. And they'll get maybe not as big as a softball, but close enough. That can be cooked like a potato. It can be roasted, tossed into a fire.
And think yucca.
Yeah,
Like pulling out the yucca.
but
Sometimes you get long ones, sometimes you
I
get
would say
little ones.
not as fibrous as
not at all.
yucca, and a little sweeter. It's actually super yummy. So it's like the finest potato you've ever had.
And so when you were running around, I talked to them about how they would have ground them and dried them and stuffed them into a cut off limb to drain things
Yeah.
out. And so spiritually for draining impurities as well. So in your body, that's what it does for you.
And since Renee said the word yucca, ooh, where's my other yucca? There's my other yucca. So this is the leaf of yucca. Yucca is a root starch that grows very well here. It is one of the most prolific. It is the staple throughout the tropics and subtropical regions of the entire world. And so you can tell by this very palmate or palm-like leaf. And so this is two different species, both make really yummy yucca. The roots of this have to be cooked. If you don't cook them, bad things happen, but nothing fancy. Boil them, roast them, whatever. The aerial parts are not edible. You cannot eat this. Do not eat this. Calcium oxalates hurt.
Ooh, good poison.
Yes. But the roots are super yummy and a staple food for so many indigenous cultures around the world. And it's really funny. We had a Shuar woman and some other, I guess, Quechua people who came and stayed at the house for, oh God, 2 weeks, taught classes
Quite a
for us.
while,
Yeah, at least 2 weeks. And we eat healthy generally. I'm not saying we're perfect, but we tend to get organic and local, and we pull things out of the yard. And it was so funny.
It was cute.
That she was trying to be so polite, being a good house guest and eating whatever the heck we threw at her, but it was not traditional Ecuadorian food. And she didn't speak really any English.
Not even good.
And so she had to work with her friends to translate. And basically she's like, I just need some yucca, because her belly was so upset from eating the foods that we normally eat. And so they went to the grocery store. No, we had some.
I did it.
Did
I
you
did
go to
it
the
for
store?
them. Yeah. So they wanted this traditional dish that basically boils down to just some chicken broth, a little bit of cut up garlic and yucca. Like that's all it is. There's
Yeah.
no pepper, there's no salt, there's nothing in it. And so I was like, oh no, I know from being with Rocio, I knew exactly what they were talking about. And so we went and found some yucca, and we might have dug some up.
Yeah,
Like
I
I
don't
got them
remember.
what they needed. And they made this big, they took it with them when they left. They make a big pot of it, and then basically we stored it so that they could have it because her belly was so jacked from eating normal food.
Yeah.
They were saying the spices
And
were messing her up.
So one of the things that we find, when we're cooking holiday meals, we tend to use a lot of dairy, a lot of heavy, ultimately bland. It's sweet, it's salty, it's cheesy goodness. Of course, we love all of those things. And we tend to mess up our guts, especially like some people will be sick for days, especially me, because I overeat, because I love all the holiday cooking. And so a lot of times in alternative medicine, herbal medicine, and so forth, we talk about the good gut flora of the body. And so we take probiotics. If you take an antibiotic, you take a probiotic, and there's literally thousands of different critters that help us. It's a symbiotic relationship that allows us to break down our foods, allow us to digest things and absorb certain nutrients. And if we eat too much sweet and yummy stuff, our gut gets out of whack. And so what is kind of like the new thing is prebiotics. So what is the food that those bacteria need in order to, isn't that awesome?
This is prebiotics.
Yes. And so
Prebiotics,
yucca,
the dirt.
groundnut are phenomenal prebiotics. And so one of the things that Teresa didn't know about prebiotics and regular probiotics, but she knew that her gut was out of whack from eating weird foods. And so she went to a bland, highly fibrous vegetable, yucca, in order to correct or rebalance her gut.
To purify it.
Yeah. And so ultimately, if we are thinking about those kinds of things, and to have yucca as a traditional dish would be super appropriate and probably had more to do with indigenous people in the South than anything that we could possibly come up with.
So what do you think?
I don't know. What else do we want to talk about here?
You could do the
we did my
sky.
favorite.
Oh, it's everywhere.
This one or the other one?
I don't know.
Well, let's do this one first.
Ooh,
do we have a paper plate? Because I'm about to make a big mess.
Yes, the Coca Cola.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that
Yes,
one.
I will. Give you the-
Or it doesn't have to be paper. I'm
I'll
trying to
just
save
go-
cleaning up a mess.
I'll get you a-
So if you don't know what this is turmeric. And so we have a number of tubers that we can grow here that are tropical. We have ginger, we have cardamom, we have turmeric, and these are and arrowroot. Almost forgot arrowroot. That's my new one I've been playing with lately. And so these are super easy to grow. And people pay big money for turmeric powder and turmeric capsules and all that, when literally you could go to the health food store, buy some, and it has to be organic for ginger and turmeric, any of those, because the regular grocery stores, if it doesn't say organic, they spray it with something that keeps it from sprouting, because it'll last longer in the fridge. And so
And you'll have to come buy
it's
more.
I won't say that it's toxic. I don't know what that crap is, but if it keeps things from living and growing and reproducing, I probably don't want to ingest it. But they put it on all of your all your root vegetables are sprayed with a anti-sprouting creepy thing. And so you have to get organic if you're going to sprout it. In the springtime, you take it. Oh. So this one is in way too, all kinds of critters running out and about to attack me. Oops, sorry. So in the springtime, so this is all turmeric. This came from a little like finger-sized piece. And if this was in a bigger
When it
pot,
comes back around, you guys, I'll show you.
yeah, if this was in a proper gallon or so
It's
pot,
like a goldfish.
I would have a full hand associated with this, or you put it in the ground,
It
it'll do
grows
the
to
same.
its container.
So the fun thing is, this is an annual I mean, it's not, it'll grow back every year, but it dies back in the winter time. So usually around December, depends on how much cold we get. I'm gonna save that, plant you again. This is my original piece that I planted. And then this grew.
Hey,
in
can
a-
you hold that up to
oh,
the
yeah.
camera real quick?
Ah.
Because it is beautiful. Before
So-
you break it all apart crazy.
So sorry, I want to do this without dropping it all on my keyboard again. So this was my original start. And then this is what grew in this tiny little 4-inch pot from that. And it's funny, like cardamom, it's hard to get it to do much. So what everybody forgets is the leaves can be used as well. So I personally, like, we have cardamom growing. We have
Steamed fish.
ginger. So wrapping a piece of fish or a piece of meat in
Mhm,
the leaves of this, and then adding something like coconut milk
mhm.
and steaming it in the oven is
So
amazing.
those are true. So what Bob just said, like people wonder how you get recipes. It's not just about tasting good. So that's a true carminative. And then you can get a real fatty fish and wrap it in it and it'll help you digest it. And then the secondary side of it is the coconut milk, which has all the electrolytes and everything that you need that's in it. That's a true boiled with other carminatives. That's lemongrass. The lemongrass actually would be in it.
So this was kept very small because of the small
Oh, it's
pot.
so pretty.
So this is all
It's so beautiful.
turmeric growing here. So what happens is, as it starts to get cold and the days get shorter, you'll think you killed the plant, it'll fall over and die. That's when we pull it out of the ground. Literally, it would be this big if you had the proper size pot. It likes, you can see this is very rich soil, so it wants really healthy soil. I'm gonna say like 3/4 sun to almost shade. I like the big leaves you get in the more part shade,
Mhm.
and it tends to flower better in the more dappled light and shade, I think. And
Can
the
I ask
flowers
you
are
a question
stunning.
about growing?
Yeah.
So you're saying that, like, here in Florida, we can force things
Mhm.
because we can make annuals not be annual, and we can do all kinds of things with it. Do you think that if you continue to harvest and put back in the ground, there's a way to force more than one harvest?
Yeah.
So
It needs
So
6 months to grow.
so okay, it needs 6 months to grow. So
Yeah.
in another 6 months,
So
versus
so
1
what would
year?
happen is, right now I'm gonna
Only December is what I'm asking.
yes. So in December, January, whenever this dies back, I'm gonna harvest the new ones, and I might take half of them and save them. The other half I'm gonna eat the hell out of. And then around March, April, something like that, I'll take each one of these that I saved to replant and put those in a nice rich 1 gallon or larger pot and line those up. By April, May, global warming, I might get a little earlier crop. It'll start to sprout. They'll get almost this high. And then November, December, January, just depending on the seasons, it dies back. I pull it out. And so quickly, exponentially, you increase your harvest. And I can use the original sprout. Like I've probably used this 10 times and it will continue to grow new ones. It'll always, this one was hanging off like that.
Is there a way to maximize the clumping? Like that
I've-
one small, is
I've
there a way to make
read-
it bigger?
Just a bigger pot. It's because of the small pot size. And so with this,
Don't.
so you can see this
That could have done that
beautiful,
with Trisha.
well, I was gonna let everybody have a piece.
Where do you save them? Like, I know you said
You
save them.
you can just literally, it's like a root in the root cellar. The question is, where do you save them?
Yeah,
If they're in a
fridge.
cool, dark place, you could put them in the fridge and they would stay forever. They even might sprout. If you put them in a pile of dirt, wrap them in saran wrap and stuck them in the back of the refrigerator, they would just stay there. But the other thing is, I've had them dry as dry can be. I've had them like rotten, shriveled up, like dead carrot in the refrigerator
They still
dry.
grow.
And I've thrown them into water and inside of a day, yeah.
Really?
Yep. So if you just laid them out, but again, if you just had a pot of dirt to the side, almost think old timey potato. Like they would have saved potatoes and shallots and stuff in a pile of dirt in the root cellar.
So don't try this at home, kids, but the most expensive probiotic that you can buy
dirt.
is dirt. So
Yeah.
they'll harvest the probiotics out of the dirt and they charge you $50 to $100 for it. I just ate some turmeric. Oh, wait, anti-inflammatory, and I got my probiotics all in one bite.
So Vanessa just wrote that hers bloom in her bowl,
Oh.
like sitting there, and mine do
So
too.
good.
Like if they get pushed to the back and I forget, then I'm like, oh, they all have little green shoots on them, and I could go out and them all.
I just found a ginger that I'd forgotten about that was like just growing out of on top of the dirt. Yeah.
Now you said the turmeric, like it dies off and then it's time to harvest. Is a ginger the same way? I just.
Ginger does that sometimes. Ginger's weird. I'm still trying to figure ginger out.
I think
Sometimes it goes through the whole year. Sometimes it'll die back.
I think as south as we are, because I know in the jungle what it does. I think as south as you guys are and as south as we are, because us being on the point makes us different than even in town and even right here, that it grows year round. And so that you're gonna have to decide when you're supposed to pull it and then go maybe every other, and then go pull those in another 6 months. In the jungle, it's just goes, and then you use the tops and the parts, and you do all kinds of weird things with them, and they spit it on you and all kinds of stuff. They totally do. Is that curry tree?
Yes.
Okay, so listen, understand that there's somebody here that might want the plants before you pull them all crazy.
I'm
Okay.
not killing them. I'm just
I'm
denting
just
them a
saying.
little bit.
Okay,
Yeah. There's one there or two back there. Your choice.
curry, you'll see right when you walked in the front door, there's two facing you on either side. You'll see.
Yeah, we forgot to do those public service announcements.
No, we get so excited.
Oh, here, this will get us enough. So curry tree, and curry tree is actually like, it is a tree. We got a 30-foot tree in our yard,
It's beautiful.
and it gets a weird black fruit on it. It's funny. I love the leaves. I'm really not a fan of the fruit. It's weird. It's
I
not
know people
bad.
who love it though.
Yeah, no, some people love it. I'm just kind of like, okay, that's good. And we all have our favorite flavors and not.
You're a sensitive young pup.
That's right. So this is an herb that grows in Sri Lanka, southern India, and is both a culinary herb as well as a medicinal herb. It's got some interesting.
It's a feeding herb too.
We had a Sri Lankan monk come and hang out at the house one day and do a class.
Because that's our life.
Yeah, and all in orange robes and so forth, and super nice guy. But he moved from Sri Lanka, went to
To
Australia,
Chicago.
and then ended up in Chicago. And
You're scarring him.
yeah, and so he could buy this dried, but he hadn't seen it fresh. And so he actually came early to the house And so I thought like,
He
what
almost
herbs?
cried. It was sweet.
Yeah, I was
He
like,
was so
what
excited,
herbs
like
does
something from
this
home.
guy know that I know are from Sri Lanka? And so things like lemongrass is from Sri Lanka, it's from all over the world. But this one was very special, and our tree was huge, and we basically cut off a tree limb for the guy to cart home. How we got that on the plane, I don't know, not my
It's so
problem.
sweet.
But yeah, he was practically in tears. He was so excited about some of the other plants we showed him. We had ashwagandha growing and lots of other stuff.
But this, he was so super excited because he knew that he could take back just a small amount and give it like all of the brothers that were there. That he taught us that you only need 3 leaves in a big pot, and that was enough to flavor everything or to stir at the bottom.
So whether you're doing a sauce or
Yeah.
a pot of rice and so forth. But yay, it's a very interesting, it's subtle, I wouldn't even call it acrid, it's almost a
It's not
musky
acrid.
kind of sweetness,
Pungent.
pungent, and has both a carminative as well as anti-parasitic properties. And ultimately, I just think it's yummy.
You can make monks cry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes
It
monks
was
cry.
it was very sweet. He was very excited. He was telling us about different ways to do it in a paste, in a big pan. If they were going to do rice, he would just brown it a little, like get it the heat going. And then again, he said to me 100 times, just 3. So I must get overpowering. But he's like, just 3 leaves, just 3 leaves. And so it was really sweet to see his reaction to it and how he responded to having something from home. The other thing is when the wind blows and you get this scent blowing through the air in the back of the garden, not only is it intense, it actually smells like cooking food. Like that smells like browned food, like cooking food. Isn't it crazy? So that's what it's doing to your tummy. Anytime you smell something that's like that, it's adding that warmth, that heat to your stomach. And Bob talks about in Chinese class, your belly needing to be a stew pot to cook all the food and meld everything together. So it warms up that stuck digestion. And all of our holiday events, like our attitudes during that time, how stressed, even if it's good stress it is, maybe a little uncomfortable meeting new people, whatever that may be, plus the foods shut down that digestion. Lots of cold, and when it's warm, lots of stuff. So we have things like the best macaroni and cheese ever that's just like cement. And so that's the kind of thing that we would add to the top or have present. Even the smell is enough to prime the digestion and your bile get flowing properly. And so those are important things to have around and to dress the table with. And it's also the typical aromatics that we do have. That's why. Like that's what the purpose was, to hide the rotten meat type of smell and help your belly, all those carminatives and things that we've hacked on the meats. And so that's a good one to have. It's a beautiful tree in your yard.
So I'm going to put a caution on the next plant.
You are pulling out wild ones.
I know, I got
Okay.
weird shit.
All right.
So this is a Florida native, and sorry, it wilted a little bit. It's called smartweed. I believe it's a polygonum.
I'll get the you guys, everybody online listening, it's important to have the Latin of this one. So I will type it into the Zoom and then I'll go over and type it into the Facebook.
And so I say it's a
Smartweed.
It's a polygonum because of the joints. I don't know if you can see that where the stem separates, it looks like knees almost. And so there are many polygonums that are used in herbal medicine. This is smartweed, not because it makes you smart, because it smarts. So I would suggest, even if you like spicy, just nibble the tip. And it's funny, I pulled this one. Where did I pull it? I don't remember.
It was it.
Oh, it was at the clinic.
It was at the clinic or
Yeah.
No, that one's not.
And so the first time, and we have a young one out front here, and there's a couple of young ones back here. I've only tried the really small ones, and they're intense. The smaller ones are a little too much. This one was like, oh, okay, oh, that settled down a little bit, and it ended up almost like a clove numbness on my tongue. So if you don't like spicy, don't try this.
So Bob, since they're only trying to tell me just polygonum as the species, the genus is not really, they're like, it's ambiguous.
Okay.
So you want to just go with polygonum, or you want me to try to hunt it?
And this is a Florida native that grows everywhere. It likes wet places, but it honestly doesn't really care. I'll let you guys split that.
I'm trying to find, does that one have pink flowers or white?
White.
Does a viculera sound correct, or a viculera? Polygonum avicularum. Well, let me see if David has a Cherokee. Because it's Cherokee.
So yeah, David Winston turned us on to this. We took him for an herb walk down at Boyd Hill.
Fagoprium? Fagoprium? No, okay.
He took us for an herb walk, or we took him for an herb walk because he's not as familiar with us. And so he was enamored with all the crazy plants that he had heard of or never seen before. And he was very proud that he was able to show us one. So yes, you could add a little zing to your stew pot with it. But now I want to show you something.
You guys, there's water in there if you need it.
Well, I'm going to show you something fun because there's another plant that will take that away. This is wild violet. And so this is another Florida native that has a unique property that it's mucilaginous and it's actually cold, where the plant you just ate is hot. And so, oops, there goes that
I
pot.
know it's
So this will take your sting away.
is that go to or oh, it's violet.
Oh, it's violet.
Wild violet.
You're not wrong. It looks really similar. You were close. The point is the difference. Where the vein comes into that point. That's the difference. I'm finding it, Bob. I'm hunting down the right one for the smartweed.
The smartweed was the spicy one?
Yes, the smartweed, like it smarts. The smartweed is the spicy
I
one.
like it.
It is kind of good. It's like at first it kind of punches you in the face and you're shocked, but then you're like, but it's all right.
It's kind of good at first. It punches you in the face, Bob.
Yeah, anti-parasitic. Yeah,
Okay.
anti-parasitic mostly. I think it more just a warming
Poisoning.
carminative.
I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
So if you try a nibble of the smartweed, it's spicy, and then the kind of heart-shaped leaf will take the sting away. So the wild violet has a small blue flower on it that's super tiny. This grows inland Florida better than the coast, but it does grow here. This time of year is when it grows really prolifically. You'll find it in shady areas, not in sunny areas, usually in rich soil. And it's mucilaginous, it's cold. It's a Chinese herb. We use the roots in Chinese medicine. It's Zihua Di Ding, which is just fun to say. And we actually use this for severe viral and bacterial disorders where you're getting like ulcerations on your body. So it's really cold energetically. And when you put that in your mouth, especially after the smartweed, you can feel that mucilaginous sliminess of the wild violet literally puts out the fire of the first one, and it's slimy in your mouth as you eat it. So we can have dry and hot smartweed that literally lights your tongue on fire, and we can put it out a minute later with something cold. All of these are room temperature, and yet the way you experience them energetically is dramatically different.
It's important that we're talking about this because Bob didn't use the term, and we should have, on the cranberry hibiscus, of mucilaginous. So mucilaginous, emollient, and demulcent are all words that denote like slimolicious okra. So anytime that we have heartburn or something that's coming up that you want to go in the other direction, that soothes it and takes it away and heals it slightly. And so for both of these things, like the smartweed and with the cranberry hibiscus, they'll have oxalates in them. And so those are things that cause that kind of like prick, that pinprick taste, like sour, like really sharp. And so that helps to soothe that. So if you were having heartburn or gas or something was coming up from the family that you needed to squish way down deep in your heart, that this would be the thing that the wild violet is synonymous for caring for your internals and coating the big long tube. And so is the cranberry hibiscus or anything in that mallow family. So that anytime you even just normal hibiscus that's just outside growing as a ornamental will do it as well. And so this is one of those plants. The wild violet also has that sticky. The heart-shaped one with the point. And so any of those that are in that, when we say mucilaginous or mallow family, those will be part of it. That's not in the mallow family, but it is mucilaginous. Fishier?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Fish mint, Houtonia sp.
Okay, so you're gonna have to. So
Oh, I
fishy.
don't know how to spell.
It's okay. Fishy smelling herb.
Yes. The Chinese name for this is Yu Xing Sao. Yuxingcao. I think I'm right on that.
Would any of us know? Okay.
Yeah, right. It's called onomatopoeia.
I'm gonna get the Latin for you guys.
Hutonia something or another. So this is, again, not native, but super easy to grow. It slowly spreads, does well in a planter box or something.
What did you say that? You thought?
Hutonia.
Okay. Oh yeah, totally insane. Cordata. Yes.
There you go.
Hutonia cordata.
So-
It's spelled ridiculously. You're right. You can't spell this.
Even if I could spell, I couldn't spell that.
Hutonia cordata,
So it's
which is several of our.
it is
herbs that we use.
appropriately named. I would say totally okay to eat it, but smell it first. Usually, depending on how we pick it, it will be
So funny.
more intense than others.
And it really is the fishy smelling herb. That's really a name of it. Like,
It smells like seaweed rotten on the beach. And so this one is used as a vegetable. This is tossed into soup, especially things that are like fish head soup or something like that, to throw a vegetable in to
Seafood
enhance
stock.
the, they use like bonita flakes and all this other stuff in Japanese cooking. This is a common thing to add anything from a lot to a little into soups and stews, even as a steamed green, but is specific for the liver, to help cool off the liver. And I say that a hot liver is things like too much booze and the angry, red-faced, yelling drunk who's shouting at the dinner party. Then you hit him in the head with this plant. No, you give him an extra heaping portion. But honestly, it's by itself, it's a little like, this doesn't smell like I want to eat it. But it
can't
takes
stop
some of the
eating it.
edge off of it when you cook it, and it infused into a soup. It's phenomenal. Imagine that with a little piece of kombu, a seaweed, with a fish broth or a clam broth or
it's very
something like that.
specific to that. I'm reading
Yeah,
about it.
anything seafood. It's not limited to seafood, but it really does well.
The other thing is that I'm reading about it, you guys, the Chinese craziness. That they separate the flowers and the leaves and the root and use them all separately.
Mm-hmm.
And during that meal, you'd eat the tea. You'd have the tea from just the flowers, and the flowers would be floating about like in the tea.
I've seen the flowers. I haven't played with
Yeah, so very nice.
it. I don't know. Let's do one or two more.
You didn't do Bidens.
Oh God, I have to do Bidens.
Yeah.
God, I know everybody
Like,
who's been to our
Up there
classes
in your
is
thing,
sick of
there's your
Bidens.
Bidens. I know, but nobody seems to know it.
I know, and everybody thinks about it. It's really funny in
Wait, hold on. It's saying specific to curry, so you guys could have the curry tree with a little bit of the fishy in it, put into the coconut milk with the lemongrass, and then you're selling.
hell yeah.
Yeah.
So all of you have this in your yard, whether you know it or not. This is the little yellow daisy-like flower. I'm sticking it in your face there. That,
Oh my gosh.
and it's got the 2-prong stickers on it that is stuck on everybody's pant leg. It's sorry, I stay away from politics, but this was hilarious. So Renee just did this wonderful video on, this is called, the Latin name of this is Bidens alba. So it's bidens, 2 teethed, by is 2, dense is teeth, like dentist. And alba is Latin for white. And so normally the Spanish needle flower is yellow, and in this one it's actually
The
white.
one time
petals.
we use the Latin all the time.
Right. And so we posted this, medicinal edible plants of Florida. We put Bidens, and I posted it in this edible plant Facebook group, and I got just this. I thought this was a non-political group, and I'm like, oh, Jesus.
It was
I
bad.
can't find the post again. Did it get
It got
Oh, I got
crazy.
banned for 3 days.
Yeah,
for
we got-
posting it.
Yeah, because she reported us for talking political. Yeah.
It was hilarious. So
Topical.
Yeah.
this has nothing to do with
It's
politics.
Yeah, about like we should have spelled it out or used like by and then then.
And you know what?
It's
To her credit, it is a very hot issue, and too much is invested into all of it. And so when I sat there and explained, like very politely, I explained it, she actually said thank you at the end.
Yeah, but
So,
it's 72 posts down. the
which
thing
is why
and
it's
we
our
were banned.
best viewed
Yeah. So
we've ever had. So I should thank her.
I should always like embed like
So
racy things into the video.
this is a vegetable, This is a Chinese herb,
Totally.
Shen Feng
I
Sao,
don't know what the Chinese is.
Xianfengcao. Sao means herb. Plant, whatever. So this is a weed in your yard. It is actually grows throughout the tropics and the subtropics and is used by all cultures where this grows. And we use it in the Caribbean. It's well known in the Bahamas for food and medicine.
I put an SPP by it because we
Yes.
show you all the time Bidens alba,
Yes.
but the other Bidens are used.
Yeah,
So there's
Pelosa,
and-
Bipinetta,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
and so it is, yes.
They're all good.
Mhm.
So this is, you can say, ooh, this is spinach, and cook it up like a green, throw it in your scrambled eggs, throw it in whatever. I'm sure it's good in a creamed spinach dish. It can be used topically. We had a lot of fun in foundations class last month, I think it was, where somebody had bug bites all over their legs. It was really bad. And they're like, what can I do for it? And I was like, we've been talking about this all 6 months. And so she was great. She actually took a bunch of different plants that we talked about to use topically and circled where she put them and then applied them topically on the bug bites and then compared how it felt as well as how fast it took the redness and the swelling and the bite out of it. It was really impressive. And I think ultimately the best way, and needless to say, she didn't do one leg and she did all the different herbs on the other, night and day. Night and day in 20 minutes, I think we saw.
did it twice this week, and once was for my son.
Yeah.
I have a picture, he had a bug bite like the day before, and he came home from school and his elbow was like double the size and red, and looked like it was getting infected. Like I drew it,
Oh, God.
and I made him go outside in the yard and pull up vines and chew it up and put it on his elbow.
Nice.
And we wrapped it on, and literally the picture, like I'll show you.
And I gotta say, so she said her son elbow swollen up, double in
This
size.
is before
Oh,
that. That's
damn.
not his bone, that's like the bite.
Horribly swollen up. And
This is after 30 minutes.
Yeah, dramatically, the redness is all
oh,
gone.
wow.
and
Can you show that
dramatically
on the?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
go-
that's
come around the
really,
backside.
that's
It
amazing.
was crazy. Yeah, I'm like, just.
So that's
Yeah,
my
just
first,
kinda-
my first herbal.
This
my-
is before.
Bug bite, ow.
Yeah,
That looks horrid.
yeah, like that was not his bone.
This is my
And then
first
this
herbal
is
memory.
After.
30 minutes later, you
Yeah,
said.
30
Is a
minutes.
bee sting
And-
when I
It
was
was
little.
crazy.
And it's funny, she did something that I'm going to say makes the medicine work better. She didn't go out and pick the Bidens and chew it up for him. She
He
made
did.
the
Mhm.
child go out and get it. When you harvest
Mhm.
your own medicine, when you invest your own sweat and energy and thought into it, I guarantee it will work better than if I did it for you. And many reasons why that may be true, but I guarantee you that's true. So this is and it's funny, you know, if you ever grew lettuce and your lettuce comes up and you start clipping it, it's this is yummy and sweet and crunchy and all of that. And then at some point, as it starts to heat up, it bolts, it goes to flour. And now we say, oh, this isn't any good. It's bitter. It's got the milky sap in it. And so we throw it in the compost pile. So in general, we saw that with the holy basil and the regular Italian basil. When something goes to flour, it changes its taste palette and usually makes it more bitter. Well, guess what? Bitter is the medicine. And so if you want some Spanish needle for food, you have to be better at botany and start to identify the leaf pattern before it goes to flower. If you want it for medicine, you want it like this, where it's all flowery and seedy and so forth, because it'll be more bitter. And you can use a combination of both. So the Chinese, traditionally in southern China, they use this as a tea in the summertime to cool off. So it's cooling. I had a fun experience with this herb, and a lot of you have heard the story. I was doing the teach-in where you go into elementary schools and tell kids how cool your job is, and it's super fun. Somebody asked the crazy herbalist to come and do that, so I went around the schoolyard and pulled a bunch of weeds up and went into this third grade class. And this kid's in there the whole time. This is pre-COVID, so I wasn't afraid. So he's coughing. Everybody's apologizing. Don't worry, he's not contagious. He's already had antibiotics and he's on steroids, and it just won't go away. And we've all experienced that, where we got sick and you got better, but there was this lingering, nagging cough that drove you nuts, and it could last weeks or months even sometimes. And so my 15 minutes of fame, he was the only kid who tasted the plant. Like, third graders are not that adventuresome when it comes to weird tasting things I pulled out of the dirt. So he was the only one who tasted it. I'm walking down the hallway to the next class, and the teacher comes running down the hall and says, Bob, what'd you give a little Johnny? I'm like, ah, crap, anaphylactic shock. Anybody can be sensitive to anything. I hope my malpractice is up to date. And she goes, he stopped coughing. I was like, oh, that's weird. And I just assumed his meds had kicked in or whatever. And so about 2 weeks later, I get a letter, like, who gets those anymore? Written in third grader that said, thank you so much for curing me of my cough. I was like, huh. And I still find every once in a while we clean the house up and I find the letter again. And so then our running joke is don't ever be friends with an herbalist, because the way we learn a lot of stuff, we're going to feed a bunch of people weird crap. And then we pay attention to see if, oh, look, that one makes you vomit. So I started feeding everybody I knew some Bidens to see not only was it repeatable that it helped a cough, but what type of cough, because every cough is different. Wet, dry, COVID is a dry cough, right? It's a weak, dry cough that never ends. Other people, the cough is only at night. Sometimes it's during the day. It can be wet. It can be unproductive. All of these weird different types of cough, we need different medicine for each one. We have to match the remedy to the symptoms. And so what I discovered was that, yes, it will help any type of cough. It has benefit, especially if we combine it with other herbs. But the reality is it is so specific for that lingering cough after a cold and flu that a teaspoon to a tablespoon chewed up fresh, it will be gone in about 15 minutes and not come back, a single dose. What's even more interesting, I've used it on kids as young as 2 years old, in which case I made a tea out of it because I didn't think they were going to chew up the nasty leaves. It works best fresh. I've not used it on younger kids because I haven't had the opportunity. I would in a heartbeat.
And this is my first herbal memory, and I was probably 18 months to 2 years old. And so my point is we would eat it. It was just food.
It's also, say Lyme disease things. Say Lyme and COVID and all.
She told me like she had a cough. I had something. I brought her a little bag, and she chewed it up and coughed for it.
That's interesting.
Nice.
It was very cool. I'm like,
this crap's for real.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm like,
And then what Bob said, if you would like to use this for food because it really is abundant and present for you, learn to identify it without the flower in the seed. Just like if we ate romaine lettuce with the flower, it'd be very, very bitter. And it will just be like spinach, but without the oxalates. We put it in our eggs. You put it into the pesto that you guys eat has it in there. Like I put it in everything. I put it in your soups, everything. And so it's a wide variety of nutrients without the oxalates you get from something like a spinach. Now, Bob, we're right at 8:22. Do you want to take questions, or you want to? I realized that you didn't actually talk about Cuban oregano.
Oh, we kind of did.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
I'll do one more. And with so like, no, I don't know of any herbs that cure COVID, but they sure help. There's a new thing that if you write or say anything about herbs in COVID or supplements in COVID, the FDA, the USDA, and the AMA will jump down your ass and give you a cease and desist. Some senior herbalist friends of ours have just gotten busted for that. So I'm going to say it supports people who are dealing with COVID, especially post-COVID issues where there's still a weak lingering
Hey,
cough.
was that somebody's question online?
No, but I was just saying it.
So in the state of Florida, especially, we support, we inform, we help fix your chi because that's imaginary. Things like that. Like that's the way we have to speak.
It directs lung chi downwards.
Yeah. And so all of the plants that we spoke to you about that have a really pungent smell that are very aromatic, those all are antimicrobials or in some way antiseptic. So that even like say the rosemary for a sick house, boiling the Cuban oregano into a sick house and bringing that about will help to, that's the purpose of them. That's the reason whether they're on the meat is what I was saying earlier. If the meat was rotten or sitting out before there was refrigeration, this would help that situation. So anything with that really intense smell could be boiled and sprayed right onto your countertop and be used as an antimicrobial, an antiseptic, and something like that of some kind, depending on what the quality of the oils were that were in it. The
Biden's also got some decent research to support its use for things for like leukemia, malaria,
staph, pneumonia, salmonella. There's a laundry list of
as
herpes.
well as Lyme disease for chronic Lyme disease. And so not to say that it cures any of it, and not even like covering my ass, but as an herb in a formula, and remember it's food. So almost every single thing we've shown you tonight, it's food that happens to have some medicinal properties to it, rather than medicine that you don't want to eat every day. Any of this stuff, you're like, yeah, you can drink
Let
that every
me
day. I
answer a
don't care.
question that's online.
Oh,
So the
yes.
question is, when you dry Cuban oregano, should it be green or black? She thinks the dehydrator was too hot. With the Cuban oregano, it's very hard. It's very difficult to not get it black because it has so much water in it.
Yep.
It's hard to dry it. The best thing you could do, Patty, especially since you are an herbalist, is decoct it into a crazy, even though we're going to lose our aromatics, decoct it down into a crazy like tarry consistency, and that would be a really intense medicine. Or tincture it with a very, very high alcohol because of its water content. It will bring the proof down. That would be a better medicine. You're probably going to get it brown, and if you try to get it all the way dry, it might turn black.
So yeah, it's funny. Sorry that this does not dry well. So you can. It's a pain. It's a hit or miss. So it grows so easy, and as long as you're here, it will. If you ever get a hard frost, it will turn to mush. It turns black and turns to mush, but it will always come back unless it's like 10 below. So if you're living up north, you can grow this inside and then take it out in the summertime. But I just say use it fresh because it's such a prolific grower. You can slice this up, but it doesn't do well in cooking. It does better chopped up fresh and either added into like a salad dressing, like a vinegar.
Or the last minute on cooking.
Yeah, you could throw it on as a garnish on top. So putting this in a pot of rice, the way I do with things like thyme and regular oregano, doesn't do well. It gets gross. But mixed in afterwards, I never even thought of doing that. I'll put this in an oil dip. I'll make salad dressing out of it, in which case it's wonderful.
But let me clarify for everybody, because you haven't been to class with me. If you put it in an oil to infuse it, it will rot and get furry.
Yes, no.
Because there's too much water content. It's got to be in the oil for dipping. It's got to be like real time.
Right,
or
yeah,
a
to use it the
very
day
high proof
of.
alcohol to
Yes,
make a
the
tincture.
day of.
Yeah. We're at 8:30.
I know there was one more. I had
You tell me and I'll try to find it for you.
I had a steak of flortada hiding.
Did you really?
I did.
Okay. Hold on, we'll look at a plant.
Renee has no idea what kinds of things I.
No, I didn't even
bought
turn
around
around.
and
You didn't talk about, well, okay. There's a little baby papaya at Damiana.
Oh, here he is. So Stachys florida, also known as Florida betony. And so scalloped, opposite leaves. Oddly this is in the Laminaceae family, which is a type of mint.
I'm typing it in, people.
Does not have smell, where most of our mints do.
Are you gonna unveil it?
I'm gonna see if
Get
we
a
got
plate,
one.
buddy. Get a plate.
Yep. Whoops. It looks like I don't have anybody here. Oh well. So it's Florida betony is its cool name. Anticlimactic.
Want me to go dig one out of the?
No,
it's
no,
right up against the wall.
No, it's too new. Ooh, but I can't separate these and create
up
two new
against
pots.
the wall. That one's too new.
So yeah, it's more seasonal thing. So this normally has a root that can be as long as your hand, and these white roots will form a rattlesnake-like tuber that is the consistency of a radish. We'll pass this around. There's nothing that exciting to see.
I'm gonna hold the picture up for you guys. If you guys look at my block, I'm gonna get as close as I can.
So
that's what the roots look like.
Yeah, and you show everybody out there too. So the betony can be eaten raw. It can be chopped into a salad. It can be pickled, which is amazing. Sautéed. Again, a Florida native. It is a high fiber item, and it's the texture of a radish, the firmness of a radish.
It's so good.
But it's got the flavor of almost a carrot.
It's a cross between a radish and a carrot.
Yeah, but not spicy like a radish. And so this has two properties to it. One, yummy prebiotic, because good fiber, it's some insoluble fiber for bulking the poop and all that kind of good stuff. But it is a nervine. So new word, things that are calming and help with frazzled nerve. You know, the chef, whoever's cooking is frazzled. The turkey didn't get done on time with the pumpkin pie or whatever, and so has got drank too much
So
and driving me nuts.
I just checked the price of it. It's $100 a pound harvested right now.
And it's
They
a
use
Florida native that's a weed in your yard.
Yeah, they use it in high scale restaurants like in the city, like New York City. And so I just typed in Bethany rattlesnake root prices, $100 a pound.
So literally, we could go in our backyard in the right season and
Betony, Florida Bethany, NY.
we could probably pull 10 pounds out of our backyard any
It's in
given
your
day.
nervine section if you have that recording. It's in your nervine section. Okay.
And so you won't find a lot written about Florida Bethany or rattlesnake root, but if you research wood Bethany,
Florida wood Bethany.
and there was once an old 1500s thing that said, sell your coat, this is from Europe, sell your coat to buy Bethany. Because this was more important for your health and wellness, mental health, than a warm jacket in the winter. And so that speaks of volumes as to what a powerful and yet safe and gentle herb. It's a vegetable. Yeah, and more frazzled nerves and anxiety, but it's not wrong.
It's very, Julie, it's not like radishes though. It's not a radish. So you can have something. It's
Radishes
not,
are spicy.
yeah, it's not a radish for sure. It's definitely something I throw in the pickle jar and eat like a carrot. I've used it in all nervous system regeneration. So if there's a myelin sheath issue, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, dementia, Alzheimer's, plaque of some kind, brain fog, even a spinal cord injury, it goes into the formula because the way that the root system works, it looks exactly like our nervous system, and the way it spreads in the ground looks that way. And we have 3 plants in particular that all fit together like a doctrine of signature that go with the brain, the medulla, and then the spinal cord and our nerves. And that's that spinal cord and nerve. And that's how it sends out across everything. And so it's something that for a long time, like we can find thousands of years of study where it would be used as one of those ones that came up first after the snow, and we would use for all kinds of heightened neurological senses like clear sight, clear thought. And so I've never gone wrong with it in that way. And even its stringy roots without the rattlesnake part of it on there are yummy and edible and look like not only our myelin sheath covering, but our structure. And so it's something that just has always gone in, and I've never gone wrong with it. And because it's food, you can use it all of the time. You can use it every day. It's something that just is present in our life. And because it's a mint, again, that's one of the things that doctors will never argue about with you. It's like mint tea. It's food. And I forgot to mention, or maybe I did, that the majority of my clinical work is critical care stuff. And so you have to kind of figure out how to navigate around. The doctors say you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this. Oh, but you can eat anything that you want. I need you to have more food. And so it's interesting how that works. So every time I find them, I'll stuff them in the pickle jar, I'll do whatever, and then we'll just have them, but they never last. As soon as anybody knows, like I have one class, they're all get eaten immediately. So if you have a big field of this, I'll pay you for it. Yeah, if they make it to class. If you have a big field of it, I will pay you for it because it wants and likes kind of wet feedish. And so it does better in wet feet. And right now we don't have that kind of thing going on.
It's funny, once you spot it in the wild, you guys got a lot.
Okay, well, listen, I will come. It's worth the drive.
It's funny.
Yes, it is.
Probably most of you have it in your yard, but you've just never paid attention. It's so auspicious looking. And so you'd weed whack it back. It probably, you've probably mowed over it before it ever flowered. And it doesn't have a smell. There's nothing to attract you to it. If you ever started digging, you're like, whoa, is that a big grub? And literally it looked like a big grub you dig up. And you're like, oh no, that's just some weird root.
I need to answer. Walker has a question. He's been watching. There's an input on a variety of this. If you get anything with the rattlesnake root, you're fine. I find that the varieties across the board usually come from exposure to minerals or exposure to light and dark. If you go up north, the true wood Bethany, that's not the Florida one, has leaves the size of the palm of my hand and doesn't have the root. So all of the Bethany is usable. We are the lucky ones that have the root that's on it. And when we had David here, who's a Cherokee and like the top of the totem pole for our hierarchy internationally for herbalists, when we had him here, he like drilled me on it. And I have an indigenous training that he's part of, and he drilled me. He wanted me to know, he wanted me to tell him anything I knew indigenously from being a Floridian. And I rambled off like the long standing, kind of like what I just did with you guys. And we find it to be superior. And so when he asked me that flat out, and he's from the other Bethany, it's like, well, what do you think? And I said, I have to say, because of our clinical use of it, I don't have any scientific proof. I only have our clinical scientific proof. I find it to be superior because of that nervous system, the way that it runs across the underside of the ground. And he said after I was done with my little spiel that he agrees with me.
Yeah.
Like he was like, yeah, I think you're right. And so it's interesting. So my point, Walker, is if you find it here and it has the root system that is prostrate across the ground and underneath, I find it to be the superior one, even if there's a variegation on the leaf or some kind of varietal.
And I think I saw Walker's back in Germany again.
Oh, Lord.
And so it does grow in Germany. The wood Bethany.
Yes, the wood Bethany does.
Bethany
And you can use it neurologically. The food part of it would be the one that was hard to find.
Yeah, you won't find the food, but the leaves for
Yeah.
just a generalized stress, anxiety, frazzled nerve kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the reality is, we've just taunted you with all these weird things. The reality, this theoretically is all about holiday cooking. So it's about starting to expand our flavor palette to incorporate those things that are growing literally at our feet or that we can grow in our gardens, and think about not just, ooh, this is yummy, but how do we incorporate those things that are helping with the stress, helping with the overindulgence, the digestive health, and ultimately add something new and unique to it.
I have something to say about that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
that's all right. And so, as we go into it, we're so many, like, if you think about, nobody eats turkey outside of like lunch meat any other time of the year, cheapest bird you can buy, right? And yet we only buy it once, maybe twice a year for Christmas too. And yet, because we all cook it pretty much the same way, unless you were my grandmama who made it great. She pour 7-Up over the top as a base. It's so good. Hard sweet glaze on there. But the reality thing about potatoes, carrots, beans, everything covered in cheese and dairy, it has one single flavor palette, and if you're lucky, there's salt and pepper on it. And so let's expand what those flavors look like, that there is more than just sweet and salty that exists. And if we incorporate these aromatics, we incorporate sour and bitter and start to stimulate and improve our digestive system right from the start. And if we're going to overindulge, try to make up for those things that are stolen away from us by that overindulgence of alcohol. And even within your alcohol, you can add new flavors and new creations and colors, because this will turn everything red. So you can really have a new fun of an experience for those things that are already there, or that you can start to grow for your next season for your meals.
So two things. Do you know a Chinese name for wood Bethany?
Nope.
Okay. I didn't think so. And what I
Might
did,
be, I don't know.
what I did is I looked it up as Bob was talking, and it is used in Chinese and Asian and all about the old fashioned wood Bethany, not the Florida one. And so I'm sure somebody somewhere can find it. It's just not been appropriated by the Chinese yet. And then the second thing is, it's very important to understand that we have monocropped everything, and nothing in nature grows that way. So we've lost key nutrients, and our broccoli that we have today, organic best scenario broccoli, is not the broccoli that our FDA standards come out of. It's really important to understand that the weeds are prolific and still here for a reason, and they have the most nourishment. They grow in community. They have the most abundant harvest. And so anytime we can eat anything that's foraged, free ranged, or growing locally, you're going to get a more nutrient dense item, no matter what, even if it's just broccoli. And so that's very, very important. That local is the most important thing out of Farmer Joe's backyard than even getting organic, because our density of nutrients is going to be diverse and grand, and especially what we need in our area.
And I'm going to say, like, I see a lot of new faces online and here. So welcome. I hope I see you all in more classes. If nothing else, you like, these people are crazy, but they know shit, but I ain't coming to none of your stuff. We've got a YouTube page, so follow us on YouTube,
Yeah.
subscribe on YouTube.
Is it the name of your business?
Yeah,
It's
Traditions.
Traditions
Yeah.
School of Herbal Studies or Traditions Herb School,
you'll-
and you can take a flyer. The markers are on it. The
I
flyers are-
hope we see you in other free classes and some of the Thursday nights, which tend to be a little bit more spiritually oriented, or the 101 or Chinese. And hopefully for all of you who are students, we'll see you soon enough. I don't know if I got any Chinese. Well, I know I got one Chinese student here. Yeah, I got my new Chinese students. I'm excited to see them in the morning. Good night, all. If anybody's got any questions, holla. If you guys got any questions, holla.
All right, are we all good?
Woo woo.
You're
Thank you all for
welcome.
giving up your Friday night, at least the
Anyone
first
that's
half.
here, you could stay and ask questions